is Sofia Pacara, and welcome back to Coming Home to Her. I'm filming at night, so I was having a bit of an issue trying to figure out whether the lighting was good or not, but it worked. It's pretty cold here, I'm not gonna lie. It was very much spring yesterday, and then all of a sudden, it's freezing cold again. Not to be a European person who talks about the weather to fill the void, we're gonna move along from that. In today's episode, I really wanted to talk about, I would say, a really hot topic almost that I know every single person can relate to, whether you're a man or a woman, and that is the topic of not being liked by everyone. If I think back onto my life, there is one very special person who is my mother that I believe and have always looked up to her of being a person who is extremely authentically herself. And my mom is really the person who's like, I don't care. Although sometimes, I'm like, oh my God, Mom, no, please, don't do that, or that's so weird. And she's like, I'm gonna do what I want. I love and respect how she always stays true to herself. And she really just kind of embodies this authenticity and not caring what other people think about her, which for me is a huge inspiration. And I would say also a way that she has raised my brother and I to be as well. Obviously, in this aspect of not being liked by everyone, it is something that is very prevalent in our lives, something that we cannot avoid at all, just like each and every one of us can say that we don't like every single person we meet. And it doesn't mean any malicious intent at all, but it's just the fact that we don't connect with everyone, and that's really okay. If I look back, let's say, onto my life, I grew up literally on a rock in the middle of the Pacific, and I definitely grew up in a very small community. It's, we have a small community on the island where kind of everyone, especially depending what schools you went to, etc. And in my friend group, we were all really close, and I would never say that we had a situation or someone, didn't like us. And that doesn't mean that, maybe there was and it doesn't matter, but perhaps I grew up quite naive or sheltered in that regard of not really being exposed, let's say, to the real world of meeting different people from different backgrounds, different ways that people behave, if, you come from all over the place, there are different, let's say, cultural things that you grew up with that perhaps are misinterpreted through another person and therefore they don't like you, XYZ, you get what I'm trying to say. And when I moved to the EU, it was really bizarre for me in the beginning, oh my gosh, what am I saying? It was really bizarre for me in the beginning to meet people and whether they liked me or not, I remember looking back at situations of meeting people and genuinely being myself, and I could tell that perhaps they didn't like me so much. And the foundation of being misunderstood was really hurtful. I remember at those times and in those moments of being like, oh my gosh, why don't those people like me? Or did I say something? Or did I do something? And where you kind of overanalyze, let's say, your behavior, where perhaps there wasn't necessarily anything you did per se, but just, like I said, the foundation of being misunderstood and perceived in a way that you don't perceive yourself is really deeply upsetting. Most definitely, I believe that, if there's people who don't like you, there's nothing wrong with you. You may just not be their cup of tea, just like another person is not your cup of tea. We all want to be liked. I think that's something humane in, wanting to be a likable person, of wanting to, let's say, build a community around you and have close relationships, etc. And it's definitely hard when you feel perhaps like those things aren't genuinely, let's say, working out. I also believe that when you do meet people, and we can all relate that when we do meet someone new, we get this perception of them from our, let's say, first interaction. And sometimes, let's say, we are quick to judge. I have two girlfriends who have talked about the story of how they met beforehand. And it's so funny because one of the girls said she really did not like the other one when they first met. And it's so funny because now they've been friends for definitely over 5 to 6 years. Yeah, I'd say 6 years. And at the beginning, one of them really didn't like the other one. She thought she was like this and this and that. And that was her perception of her when they first met based on, their first interaction. Obviously, there are, let's say, so many layers to a person's personality. And maybe the day you met them, they were in a bad mood, but you were super put off by, the way that they behaved or interacted with you, that it made you, let's say, judge them. And although that is okay and something that is obviously very normal and we can't necessarily completely avoid, I think it also goes back to the foundation of being misunderstood and how that's hurtful, because the way that someone may have perceived you to where they made a decision that they don't like you is hurtful. And that is not necessarily the real you. I think it's also important to, let's say, release this, I don't know, idea that we need to be liked by everyone. Also, the way that someone perceives you has nothing to do with who you are. And I also believe it's really important to, nurture and hone into the relationships and the people who love and support you for who you are. I mean, in each personality, there are multiple layers, as I mentioned, and to let people be wrong about you. I also am a firm believer that the people who are in your life will stay for a reason, and the ones who go are meant to go for a reason. I have definitely had multiple situations and scenarios where I was perceived completely different to who I am. Perhaps I would say, if I'm looking back at a certain situation, I was, let's say, in a time of my life where I was, young, wild, and free, and having fun and working and just like being out and everything. And I remember someone said something to me that was pretty hurtful, where they said, "I'm like this." And I looked at them and I was like, "Excuse me? Like, I'm sorry. That's absolutely not how I am." But that's how they perceived me. It kind of made a mark, if I can say that, in the aspect that I won't forget it. But also it reminded me, I don't really want to be friends with this person if they can't, look around that. And not that they necessarily need to, that's totally fine. But when you are getting to know someone, I would at least hope that someone would have an open mind in that sense. We're not friends. I'm not really a big fan either, and no bad blood, no malicious intent at all, but a perfect example of how sometimes you just don't get along with everyone, and that's totally fine. Another thing, like I mentioned, sometimes it's, so much more powerful to just let people be wrong about you. And I find myself also, in this aspect of over-explaining myself or compensating for, something of just, I feel awkward because of something, and then I'm like, yeah, I always need to explain. And something that I've genuinely learned, and something that I am trying to actively work on, is to not need to explain everything. And that kind of falls into the category of people pleasing, in my opinion. You don't need to try to force and control, let's say, the perception that this person has of you, and just to kind of let it be. If I can kind of take it back to my mom, I know I touched base on her briefly. I think it's also super important to be authentically yourself. I genuinely find it sad when I see people who are trying to be something they're not, or wanting to be perceived in a different way. And of course that stems from, let's say, insecurities and stuff. And we all have things we're insecure about and, hopefully all want to work through. But it is super important to just be yourself, not to tone yourself down because you want to fit in more into, let's say, a group or a place or whatever. I have definitely found myself in the, let's say, in the phases of moving to different places, of kind of molding myself to, let's say, the culture or the people that, you see on a daily basis, or just kind of have small social interactions with on the tram or the metro, whatever it may be. I mean, here in Europe, people don't talk to each other. I'm just saying, like, in that regard of not necessarily dimpering your personality down just so that you are fitting in. It's genuinely super important to be yourself, to, be confident in who you are. And if you are different, that's also super totally fine. I think that was one of my New Year's resolution goals was to be more bold. Sometimes I've definitely been perceived of being super American in my personality, even though I'm from Hawaii. And for example, like I mentioned in another episode, when I am in Brazil, which I was a few weeks ago, it's a place that I genuinely feel like I can be myself. And I would say that I really relate to Brazilian culture. And I also believe that our culture in Hawaii is very similar to Brazilian culture as well, of just, being loving, being open, being kind, being genuine, being respectful. And living in the EU, it's very opposite in that regard, in my opinion and perspective, that, people are more quiet, they're more to themselves. more black and white almost, like everyone is kind of the same. That's obviously not the case. I'm just generalizing, but perhaps there isn't so much, let's say, cultural flair like Latin countries or more warm countries. And that's something that I'm genuinely working on, of just not caring. You know, if someone doesn't like me because perhaps I am more open or more talkative or just, let's say, more expressive, that's not a reflection of who I am. That is a reflection of themselves and probably something that they're insecure about. A lot of people sometimes don't like you because you are more confident, or you have, let's say, more of a shining energy, or, you know, a nice aura, or you get more attention, or whatever it may be for being authentically yourself. And a lot of people don't like that. And it triggers other people because they feel insecure within themselves. I'm sure it's probably something that they wish they could be, or something that they would like to, you know, be. And that obviously creates, let's say, jealousy, and it's really sad. Everybody needs to be true to themselves. And if you want to be more spunky, or if you want to be more something, you should do that for yourself. It's totally fine to not be liked by everyone. Remind yourself that it's not a reflection of you. There's nothing wrong with you. You just don't, let's say, connect with that person 1000%. It's honestly nice to not connect with everyone. You don't want to be everyone's friend. Being liked by everyone is also exhausting. Why do you need to like fit in this box that everybody needs to like? And just, you know, be true to yourself and enjoy who you are as a person and the people around you who appreciate and love you for who you are. Another thing that I think is pretty relatable, especially in our day and age, is when you are more visible, let's say through social media, if you're sharing more about your life, also me talking in front of a camera, or if you're listening to my voice, it's a way for people also to have more opinions about you, whether that is, you know, judging you for the way that you're talking, or judging you for what you're talking about, or the photos you're posting, what you're wearing, etc. When you do put yourself out on the internet where everybody has access to look at your stuff, that of course comes with more judgment. And I think it's something that you kind of need to be at peace with, or something I'm also learning how to be at peace with, of just not caring. I mean, people, as we know, hide behind screens and put other people down, which is really sad for them. And the people who enjoy your stuff will support you. But we always know, just like every single person stalks people, there are always going to be people who are secretly going to look at your stuff and probably hate on you. But at the end of the day, I think it's such a slay to live your best life and just be unbothered. Not everything deserves a reaction. You can be a really good person and an amazing, let's say, human being, but some people are still not going to like you. And like I said, it's not your problem. I wanted to close this little episode off with a reflection question, which I think is honestly wonderful in the aspect that I just spoke about, you know, not being liked by everyone. Perhaps just kind of reflecting on your life and, let's say, the things you've gone through and the things that perhaps you are living through. The question that I want to ask is, am I being fully myself, or am I adjusting who I am to be liked by others? Think about that and perhaps answer that in your head or share with someone next to you, if someone is next to you. I don't know. Just be at peace with who you are. It's important. And honestly, when you're unbothered and you're not worried about how others will perceive you, your life is way more tranquil. Those are my 2 cents for today, and I hope you enjoyed.